Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. We are here with our semi-regular panel. We have Mike Lee down there. It looks like somebody shot a gaping hole in his wall there, or just above his head. Too bad they missed. We also have Kevin Ryan, who has a hat that I don't know. What does that stand for? The Avengers or something? You look like the kid from Sandlot whenever you wear a hat, though.
Avon.
Isn't that a makeup company? Oh,
What?
okay. Yeah, Avon ladies. They sell makeup.
Oh my God, I hate you.
Can you confirm or deny the reports that you're a
Yeah,
makeup salesman?
that's who I am this week.
Okay. We have we have a lot going on this week, obviously, with this Democratic National Convention. I want to go to Kevin first so we could talk about this little email deal that they had going on there. Give us a little bit of the details on that email thing. What was going on? Who were what were they stifling dissent? How are they stifling dissent? Was there quid pro quo going on with donors? Why isn't there more of this? It seemed to be like one day in the media cycle and then disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that unbelievable? This is one of the bigger stories of the entire election cycle so far, and it lasted all of 2 days, and now supposedly there's all the Bernie delegates have fallen in line and everything's happy again. By the way, if you want, go on Unbiased America right now. I just posted a movie I made from sources about the true state of the convention goers right now, at least the Bernie supporters. They are still upset. And last night they staged a massive walkout that was really not talked about a lot in the mainstream media. Anyways, back to the email thing. You had these emails come out. Now, who knows where they came from? Actually, we do know it came from the same people that brought us a bunch of the diplomatic cables from the U.S. government. Julian Assange people released them, WikiLeaks, and these ones show that the Democratic National Committee was actually siding with Hillary Clinton. They're supposed to be impartial, but they weren't. They were actually, and we're not talking about a couple of secretaries and a couple of walk-on volunteers. We're talking about the chairman of, the director of media outreach. We're talking about the basically the entire upper echelon has emails in which they are trying to work with the Hillary people to keep down Bernie, and they're trying to keep Bernie down. They're making sure that Bernie's people don't get good interviews and so forth. And these are emails they never thought would see the light of day, but when they did, right before the convention, the Bernie people are really mad.
Can you tell us though how they got their hands on these emails?
Well, that's the thing. That came from WikiLeaks. I mean, WikiLeaks released the emails. There's like something like.
So this Assange guy hacks into it. He's still hacking.
Well, that's an interesting thing because just today, or in the last couple of days, the government has suddenly started an investigation in which they're saying that it's Russia who has hacked into these emails, and that Russia, they're insinuating, is somehow in cahoots with Trump. Oh
my God!
And Trump came out. I know, isn't it? And Trump came out today and was like, "Whoa, I don't know what's going on. What are you talking about?" In fact, Trump, just before we came on, well, not just before, but earlier this afternoon, made a big splash when he said that, well, maybe we should ask Russia if they have the missing 30,000 Hillary emails that she deleted. Hey, Russia, if you hacked those things, why don't you give them to the FBI and help with the investigation? And now there's this big backlash against Trump for saying that.
And that was it's such a tongue-in-cheek comment too.
Oh
it's just
God,
like
they totally turned it around.
It's his problem.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's funny though because it's all about these media narratives, and there was quid pro quo for donors in there to give them positions in the federal government. You hear nothing about that. Yeah. Just imagine this coming out about the GOP. There was some shady. Go ahead.
It'd be the end. It would be the end. It would be a game changer, instead of a 2-day, sideshow.
This is what Unbiased America is about, though. Is there bias in the media? I mean, how many times do we need to see it firsthand for people to understand that the media is a cartel, and that you're never going to get it's what they omit, it's what they talk about, it's the news cycle, and they seem to just this isn't news, you see. And then also, what was it? I think it was in the late 40s that Dixiecrats had a walkout. There was 36 or 38 Dixiecrats walked out. It was huge news. You know what I mean? I think this is 150 Bernie delegates that took off, and you don't hear anything about it. I've been getting my news largely from people in social media, like people that I would trust in social media, and I just find this to be fascinating. Mike, do you see this? Do you see a coordinated effort in the media to suppress certain stories, to create narratives here as well? I mean, is it just overwhelmingly obvious, or are Kevin and I being biased?
I think you definitely see it. One of the examples, and Kevin talked about this earlier this week on the page, was how the media framed the Republican National Convention. Yeah, there was a little bit of a drama there, especially with Ted Cruz, but Trump's speech was widely well received by the entire country. Almost 75%, I think, was the approval of the speech. And the media is talking about how it was a train wreck, how it was dark, how it was gloomy, and how it's the worst thing ever, and the Republicans are a mess. But yeah, so definitely like that storyline gets play, and then the DNC, which is probably a bigger story. Oh, it's obviously a bigger story. We talk about it for 2 days, and then we're done. And what's lost in all this is who really cares if it was the Russians or not? The truth doesn't change just because it was the Russians who hacked the email. If I hacked the email, it's still the truth. It doesn't really matter where it came from. So okay,
But it was a white male that hacked it, though. It was.
Yeah, I don't understand how the Hillary campaign strategy here is, oh, we're going to deflect attention to the Russians. Well, who cares if it was the Russians? It doesn't matter. This is what happened. It doesn't matter who found out.
There are other stories here, and I wanted you to talk about this one, Mike. A couple of days ago, it was reported that there weren't any American flags there, but there were communist flags, the hammer and sickle, and so on and so forth. Imagine the outrage if there were the Nazi flags there, fascist flags. Whatever the symbol they had there in Italy, the eagle. The same in fascist Germany. There were actually communist flags, communism, which is responsible for 100 million deaths, genocides, mass starvations in the 20th century alone, and you don't hear about it on the news. Imagine at the Republican convention you had a Confederate flag or a Southern flag. I mean, there would have been this media outrage. Here you have a flag that's about stealing, theft, and murder, and nothing. And then I guess it was yesterday they finally got some American flags primarily because of optics. But I mean, this double standard is unbelievable. I mean, here you look, we have Trump's being called an authoritarian and a fascist by libertarians, by everybody. I don't hear anybody calling Bernie what he is, a Marxist. The man's a blatant Marxist. Why are people terrified to say this? That's what they are. He's a communist. That's what he is. And I don't hear anybody saying it. It's like everybody in the media is terrified to call him what he is, but everyone is out there, hey, these libertarian economists, Trump's an authoritarian, Trump's a fascist. But I don't hear him talking about Hillary Clinton's economic model or Bernie Sanders' Marxist economic model. What's going on here? What's with the disconnect?
Well, I think among Bernie supporters, they'd probably admit that he was a Marxist. But in the media and other mainstream circles, we get to hear the narrative about how he's a democratic socialist, which is absolutely meaningless. I don't know what does that even mean. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Bernie supporters would backtrack from the fact that he's a Marxist. I think they own it, which is honestly more honorable than how the media.
I agree. I mean, I'm saying they would admit it. I'm just saying, why isn't the media or pundits out there? Why aren't they out there saying it? And when they do say it, you're derided. It's like, Bernie's a communist. Oh, you're a fear-mongerer, you see? But like Trump, all day call him a fascist. I see these intellectuals, libertarian intellectual economists who probably just stick to economics, calling Trump an authoritarian. I'm no Trump fan here. But I mean, because the guy wants to follow immigration laws doesn't make him an authoritarian. Because his rhetoric is that, oh, I'm going to keep Apple here, doesn't mean that he said, I'm going to work around Congress to keep Apple here. You know what I mean? Like, both sides have awful rhetoric. If we were to just judge on rhetoric, you would say Bernie Sanders is a communist. A free college? What? I'm going to raise taxes to 90%? That's theft. You're stealing. So I don't see why anybody else is saying, is ringing these bells. Kevin, would you agree, or am I going crazy?
Well, you're both right. You are going crazy, but I agree.
Yeah.
And it has gotten so out of hand. I mean, I started Unbiased America not because I wanted to craft my own view of the world, but because I was so fed up with watching stuff like we talked about CNN and how they covered the primaries, and we were quite nice to them, and I think did a good job especially on the Republican primaries. At least they finished off well. They didn't start too well, but they finished off well. And it's like as soon as they saw that it was Trump who had a potential of being the president. Now, 90% of journalists everywhere in the media are liberal. And as soon as these people looked in the mirror and said, oh my God, I'm a journalist, I have to report this stuff, I have a huge voice in the world right now, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that Trump is not elected. I guarantee you, these journalists actually are saying that to themselves as they look in the mirror at night, because the difference in coverage now versus the coverage that happened before he was nominated by the Republican Party is night and day. Suddenly it's the Clinton News Network. Suddenly it's like you cannot believe. Every time I log in, I'm like, what happened to the protest from the Bernie supporters? This was going to be a huge story, and then there's nothing. They just talk about how great Michelle Obama was. They talk about how everybody's coming together, how this is the
How do they get away with it,
convention.
Kevin? How do they get away with it, more importantly?
Because there's not a lot of dissent. I mean, as much as we like to say, if you go online, you can read the dissenting voices, you can hear the truth being told out there. In reality, the largest portion of the media is the same sort of liberal organizations that have been out there forever. Other than Fox News, tell me, is there one large mainstream media organization that is not firmly in the liberal camp? Who do you go to? I mean, if you're
One America News Network.
Yeah, if your entire day consists of going to work, coming home, flipping on the nightly news, you're not going to see anything that this media conglomerate doesn't want you to see. And that sounds like a conspiracy theory. It absolutely is not. There's tons of data to back this up.
Let me ask you this though: is there more dissent on the right, even within media companies, even on Fox News? There's some dissent. I mean, I think it's a full-blown Trump network, but there's still some dissenters on Fox News. It seems that the other stations are in lockstep. Just like it's like the Democrat Party tends to be in lockstep behind their nominee. They feign unity, but it seems like they keep the dissent behind closed doors, whereas the Republican Party isn't feigning unity. They're having a debate out in the open to whatever degree. I think that they shut out the grassroots.
And
right. Absolutely. But what you hear is you get a narrative of this dysfunctional GOP, this national populist fascist GOP. They don't represent me. They don't represent this guy. This is a horrible racist KKK party. And then you get into the DNC convention, and Michelle Obama's wonderful. And oh, did you hear Elizabeth Warren's speech? I mean, her speech was straight out of. It sounded like it was straight out of the Communist Manifesto. I mean, I'm shocked listening to the words they're saying.
They were ripping Bernie supporter signs out of people's hands in the crowd, taking them away.
They're tolerant, though.
To avoid the vision of waves of this Bernie supporters in the crowd. They were pulling it.
They're tolerant.
Yeah.
It's tolerance, though. That's what real tolerance looks like. You see, you're a bigot, so stop.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, this is fascinating.
This is the type of thing. This is the reason I started the page, because this is the type of thing that just makes my mind boil.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this, and I'll get to Kevin on this after you, Mike. Do you think that this DNC just solidifies more support for Trump? I mean, are we seeing what we saw play out in the primaries, where you have this overly active American left that's largely becoming a socialist party, shutting out dissent, acting like children, just angering the right, and you have this reactionary right that has been largely reactionary, and what they're going to do is coalesce around Trump when they see this stuff. I mean, is that what you would? Perhaps that's why they try to keep a lot of this out of the news cycle, is that they don't want to coalesce support around Trump. But I mean, it's going to be hard to not. I think Trump might get a bump out of this DNC convention. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I don't know if he'll get a bump, but I think the Hillary bump will be smaller than what you've seen in other conventions, and it will be smaller than the bump that Trump got. And I think really the narrative that the Democrats are trying to push here, I think you're right, I think it's helpful to Trump, because the Democrats are trying to push this narrative that everything's rosy and everything's good and Obama was great, and people in this country are pissed off. Some of the things they're upset about, is just populist, stupid stuff, but in general, people are mad, they're angry, They don't buy this narrative that's coming from the left that everything's rosy, Obama was great, Trump's the fascist, Trump's the racist. You know, when people accuse him of these things, it helps him out.
Right.
It's helped him out the entire primary. The more mud you throw at him, the more popular he gets. And that's what's happening at the DNC right now. I don't see how they think they're going to defeat Trump by throwing mud. The population knows that Trump's not a racist, that Trump's not, unless you're firmly in the liberal camp on the left, people don't think that Trump's a racist. They don't think he's a fascist. They're more realistic than that. And the more mud they try to throw at him like that, the more they try to silence him, he gets more popular. They're on the wrong track with this.
Kevin, would you agree with that? I mean, do you think that this DNC is only going to coalesce more support around Trump? I mean, look, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a Trump guy because he's racist or a KKK crap. All of that crap, that's such nonsense. I don't like Trump because he doesn't like the Constitution, and he seems to be a big government guy. He's already talked about using government, the federal government, to raise minimum wage, which is also bad economics. His protectionist policies are horrible. What he's done in his business life with the takings clause and so on has been, I think, reprehensible. That's why I don't like Donald Trump. But I mean, these people are making me want to vote for Donald Trump. I mean, do you think I'm an anomaly, or do you think that's kind of like that's what's going on here in a broader context in the body politic?
Well, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a Democrat versus in the shoes of a non-Democrat to understand how this is being received. And obviously, there's a bunch of Bernie supporters who they're gonna convert. They're gonna vote for, by the large amount of them are gonna vote for Hillary. But there is, and we don't know what that number is. People are saying 8%, 10%, whatever, are actually gonna side and end up voting for Trump. I mean, that's not just sitting at home. You're talking about 8% that could have gone to Hillary are now going to Trump. That's a 16-point swing right there of the amount of Bernie supporters. So it really does depend on how much the DNC alienates these people. And the one thing I think, another very uncovered story, is that right after Debbie Wasserman Schultz got fired, essentially, or resigned from her position as the chair of the DNC, Hillary Clinton hired her to head her 50-state outreach program. One of the largest, basically to be one of the
it's amazing
of her entire campaign. It's like Hillary is just rubbing it in the noses of the Bernie supporters.
Could a Republican get away with that?
Absolutely not. But that's the state of the media. I mean, that's just the way the media is. Until people start, getting out of college or getting out of high school and deciding, as conservatives or non-liberals start deciding I want to be a journalist, it's going to continue, because most people who are journalists are liberal, end up going into journalism, are liberal. So it's not going to change anytime soon.
I want to shift gears here, and I'm going to start with Mike, and I want to talk about how these parties seem to be courting what it looks like to be the center. It seems that there's a war. We talk about how polarized everything has become, and it seems that way on its face. I think just the rhetoric has become polarized as you watch politicians fight it out for the middle. You see the GOP abandoning its base. I mean, conservatives are the big losers here. Nobody cares about constitutional conservatism anymore. Cruz has been mocked. Cruz was mocked after his speech, which I thought was a good speech. Trump doubled down the day after, saying his father was involved with the JFK assassination because there was a picture on the National Enquirer. And what he doesn't understand, what he is talking to conservatives. When he bashes Cruz, he's talking to the base, and he's just alienating them even more as he actively courts Bernie supporters. Now you see the DNC, they're kind of sloughing off the Bernie supporters, like, oh, you're going to vote for us anyway. Hillary Clinton nominates Tim Kaine, who isn't the Bernie supporters aren't a fan of Tim Kaine. So it seems like the war is being waged out in the middle, and that the big losers here are constitutional conservatives. Nobody's courting them. At least you have Gary Johnson, you have Jill Stein, you have even Trump courting Bernie supporters. What about the constitutional conservatives? I thought we had this radical right party. You know what I mean? That this extreme right-wing party, and that the country's center-right. It doesn't seem to be that way anymore. Do you agree, Mike?
Well, I think the country's still center-right, but I think what people see is that the biggest voter demographic in the country is independents. That's the biggest voter demographic. But
Trump's winning them.
Yeah, and he is. But independents don't vote based on who's more to the center. They vote for ideas. They don't care if you're more to the center. So courting independence by being closer to the center is not the way to go. You think about Hillary tried to get the center in the 2008 Democratic primary. Obama ran to the left of her. He won. McCain was supposed to be the center candidate. Obama ran way to the left of him. He won.
Just to stop you, I'm not cutting you off, but I want to clarify for viewers. You're saying there's no meat on the bone at the center. That the ideas are on the Constitution, like perhaps if you're a GOP member, the ideas are on the constitutional side, and that's where the real meat is. Win over those independents with that. If you're just moving towards the center, you're kind of like there's no real arguments to be made there.
Are you actually a cyborg? Because you're coming across, your mic is all messed up.
Oh, it is.
Robot voice, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I get what you're saying. No, there's no meat on the bone at the center. And like I said, Obama ran to the left of Hillary, then ran way to the left of McCain, while McCain tried to court the center. The last person that ran on conservative principles, Ronald Reagan, really true conservative principles, won 49 states. Okay. George Bush.
In his second, that was in his re-election campaign. His first was 45 states, but you're right. The second and 8 49.
Yeah, so I mean, these people, the people that stand on principles, that don't try to court the center, that put out policies, that put out ideas. Independents aren't looking for you to be in the center. They're looking for you to make them believe in your ideas. And you have to stand for something. And you look at what George Bush did. George Bush Sr. didn't stand for anything. He moved to the center. He moved away from Reagan policies, and he paid the price when he lost to Bill Clinton in '92. And Bob Dole is another centrist candidate who lost to Bill Clinton. Running to the center and trying to capture independence isn't the way you win elections. I think that's been borne out over and over again, but yet here we are again. Both candidates are trying to capture that center. Now, Trump's going to win these independents because Trump stands apart from Hillary. He says these wacky things, and some of them make absolutely no sense, but people are going to get behind someone that stands out, that doesn't just say what we think you're supposed to say. Trying to get to the center is not a strategy for winning.
Well, let me actually give you a rebuttal there. Will, by the way, your mic was basically inaudible. I don't know if you need to unplug it and replug it.
Is it working now?
Yes, perfect.
All right.
So my rebuttal is, to a certain extent, a lot of this does not depend, when it comes to the general election, a lot of it doesn't depend on ideology. It depends on personality. And what you saw with Reagan, more than anything, was an optimistic tone and a very fatherly sort of personality. I mean, people were looking for leadership after Jimmy Carter's horrible presidency of just being a very flaky type of a president. And it was the perfect time for a Ronald Reagan who had that type of way of addressing people that was very sort of soothing and very, everything's going to be fine. We know what we're doing. And I think when you move from the primaries to the general, you do have to start looking after you have to start going after different features. I'm not saying that you have to become this John McCain, or you have to become this, in fact, it's the opposite. You have to have principles, but more than anything, you have to communicate yourself well. And I'm not sure who's going to win that battle, because you've got two very unlikable candidates right now. But there is no Reagan out there right now. There is no Reagan.
Well, nobody talks about those same principles anymore. They've been largely, the GOP doesn't talk about them.
I would say Ted Cruz is a Reagan, by the way. Closest I've seen, but
yeah, I just don't think that he has the oratory or eloquence the oratory skills or the eloquence to be a Reagan. I think the way he talks is preachy and kind of weird. I think his ideas are on par, but I just think that he has this disconnect. He comes off as really nerdy and wonky and isn't really talking to the people. I think Reagan had that, where he's it sounds like he's in your living room talking to me, and I feel a lot better. Where Cruz is like, I think to a degree we have this problem sometimes. It feels like he's talking at you, and you know what I mean? And he's like, he's not talking with you, or you're having a conversation, because he's intimidating. He's a very bright guy, and I think that I just don't think that plays well with the people. I think that he has. I'm not saying that he couldn't win. I'm just saying that that's his problem.
And he also fell into the trap. He also fell into Trump's trap. I mean, I would never have envisioned Reagan getting into that whole, you called my wife ugly type of argument. But that's a trap that I think. Listen, Trump is a wild card. There's never been a candidate like Trump at this level. So how Reagan would have dealt with a Trump, I have no idea.
I mean, well, he dealt with Jimmy Gerald Ford in much the same manner. I mean, Ford went after Reagan's hair, and they went after his age, and
Ford went
Ford
after
did.
Reagan's hair. Ford
Yeah.
went after Reagan's hair. Have you seen Ford's hair?
Yeah, I know. They went after. I mean, Nancy never liked Ford. Reagan never supported Ford. They never got along. I think I mean, the stuff that Trump was doing with his wife, retweeting that picture was just bad form. Saying your dad was involved in the JFK assassination, that's on another planet, kooky. That's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're you're slandering my father at this point, saying that he's involved in the assassination of a United States president. What?
Let me ask you a question. How is it that Trump has has done this 180-degree turnaround where he had, according to the 538 blog, only a 20% chance of winning the election at the beginning of July, and here we are at the end of July, and if the election was held today, according to 538, he would win.
Yeah.
What happened? And this wasn't only a small bounce occurred after the convention.
Right.
It was a big bounce, but the largest portion of his bounce occurred between the beginning of July and the convention. What did he do? How did that happen?
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Well, I was going to say, I've been saying it for a year now, that even Trump can beat Hillary Clinton. If you look at the polls, and this has been going on since she was First Lady, the longer Hillary Clinton is in the spotlight, the least she gets less popular as time goes on. This happened when she was First Lady, this happened when she was Senator, this happened when she was Secretary of State, and this happened when she ran for President in 2008. So there is a long way between primary elections and the general election, and we still have 2.5 months to go. People are turned off by Hillary Clinton. They always have been. The longer they have to hear from her, the more they don't like her. And not only that, she's scandal prone. I mean, we had the FBI thing come out recently. I mean, any reasonable person, whether she was charged or not, they heard what Director Comey said. They get it. She broke the law. And if she didn't break the law, if you don't believe she broke the law, she was unethical. So people get it. She gets more unpopular. She's scandal prone. And there's still 2.5 months to go here. And she's going to be in the spotlight even more now. And so I'm not surprised at all that Trump's made up all this ground on Hillary Clinton.
I'm not surprised, only because I brought this up on the show before, that this is a reaction. This is a reaction to the American left shifting to the European left, and an underrepresented GOP that's never really had an opposition party, that's never really had a voice, that's tired of being called racist, bigoted, every name in the book. This is a populist, a nationalist movement. Where people are tired of having this unfettered illegal immigration. They see the effects on it in their neighborhoods, in their areas, and they're tired of it. They're tired of being spoken down to. He's tapped into that anger, and this has happened in the past with the People's Party in 1889, the progressive movement, the progressive populist. I mean, again, nationalists, it's a progressive populist movement, again, like they had with Teddy Roosevelt, whose Bull Moose Party was originally called the Progressive Party. I think it dies out. I think conservative principles come back. I'm just saying that he is winning because he's tapped into that anger, that reactionary anger towards, look at the left, look at the Democrats. I mean, we just talked about how it's coalescing support for Trump. I believe that's what's happening. I believe that this is a reaction to, this is like a European right, as the European right is a reaction to the European left, and we're seeing that here in our country, unfortunately. I mean, I thought that the United States was above all that nonsense, that we were this capitalist nation, that we were this center-right nation. We understood, the best means to allocate resources and to raise the standard of living. But it seems that emotions and rhetoric are starting to trump reality. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin? How do you think he did it?
That's an interesting thought, actually. It hadn't occurred to me that we're transitioning from an American left to a European left, but that's exactly what's happening. But I think what he's done is he's along the lines of what you said. I think he's basically speaking out not just for conservatives or people in the middle who feel like they've been forgotten, but he's speaking to the people on the left who feel like they've been forgotten. And especially white America, which is something that you hear a lot about, but not sort of at the mainstream media level. But when you see who Hillary chose as her VP, or as a running mate, she did that to court whites, to court males, because she has a huge problem with white males. And even on the left, especially on the left, I think this is where her problem is, and this is what Trump is playing into, is the fact that the left has really been catering to sort of minorities. They've been catering to special interests. They've been catering to very small interest groups that are very influential in the Democratic and liberal community, but they really don't have all the votes that the general population of liberals do, and they're leaving behind a lot of liberals who feel like, you know, they're not being spoken to, people who don't like trade, who don't like the TPP, and Donald Trump is speaking to them in a way, and they feel like, you know, people are coming in and taking their jobs. You have a whole base of blue
nationalism.
Yeah, nationalism. You have a whole base of blue-collar Democrats that feel like they're being left behind.
And I think that's what Trump. That's where the war is being waged right now, and Trump is trying to get those blue-collar Democrats that fight for the middle. It's interesting. Did you see? I don't know if you guys saw today what Nancy Pelosi had said about this. This is another thing that people are fighting back on. Nancy Pelosi said that, you know, white males, uneducated white males, vote for Trump because all they care about is guns, gays, and God. You know, that they vote because they hate gays, that all they care about is guns and God. And I mean, that's perhaps one of the most bigoted statements I've probably ever heard. You'll never hear it in that context. This is what people are fed up with. The left. This woman wouldn't know in economics if I hit her in the head with Tom Sowell's basic economic books as hard as I possibly could. And then she's talking about God. Well, I got news for you. The country was formed on the basis that there's a creator and that our rights are endowed by that creator. So what are you talking? What are you talking about?
Barack Obama. Remember Barack?
Right. The same thing.
Clinging to guns and religion. Was it Obama? I think it was.
Yeah, it was Obama, and Hillary ran and said the same thing in 2008.
That began the Rust Belt revolt of people who, especially in coal country, are like, wow, they're not speaking for me anymore. And
Right.
Trump's playing into that.
This is the best, though. Hey, white guy. Oh, I'm turning out to the polls because I hate the gays. What?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know one single person that says everyone. Anytime you take a poll, it's about economics, and she actually said they're voting against their economic interests. Pelosi said this. Here's a woman again. She's devoid of any economic knowledge. What do you know? It's like they're so power hungry. Everyone else is stupid. I'm the elite. I know what's good for you economically. What do you know? You just hate gays, and all you want are your guns. That's the mentality from these people. And you have Trump, who's a plain-speaking guy. They're willing to forgive him on saying dumb stuff because he's out there just talking like a regular guy, not talking down to people. He's not talking down to the American people. As much as you hate the guy, well, I do. He's not talking down to us. He sounds like one of us. So here's a billionaire. Isn't that ironic? That sounds like one of us.
He sounds like Grant, I'd say.
Yeah. Grant wishes he sounded like Trump. Let's be honest. Mike, do you agree? Is this part of this elitism? Even you see this within the Republican Party. There was an elitism with Boehner and McConnell, how they shut out the grassroots, they shut out conservative voices. Is this a reaction? Is this a reaction to that stuff?
Well, I think you hit on an important point, and I think Kevin hit on it too with the light of the white working class kind of voter. I've actually been saying this for a little bit now, that I think Trump has a chance to take Michigan. Now, you said about that. Michigan. And you got a lot of white working class union members who are traditionally Democrats. But Trump is speaking to these people more than the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party has pushed these people aside, said, I don't care about you guys. We're going down the road to the left. And these people, they care. As naive as they are about it, they care about things like resisting trade agreements. They care about things like keeping jobs in America and companies in America. You're gonna take these Midwestern swing states, and you're gonna hand them to Trump because he's speaking to these people. He speaks like them, like you said. They understand the way he talks.
So do you think promoting economic freedom and free trade is dead?
No, I don't think it's dead, but I think it's dead in 2016. It's definitely dead in 2016. The most middle position you can take in 2016 is fair trade, whatever that means. It doesn't mean anything. All trade is fair, but yeah, I think right now, you've seen this. You've seen this populist rhetoric pop up in Europe too. We had the Brexit vote not that long ago, and a lot of that's there too. So that's a theme right now. I don't think it's as long as the Republicans or whoever comes out of this as a conservative party gets back to preaching about the message of trade. I think we'll get back to it, but I do think it's dead in 2016, and I think Trump's got a good plan to steal some of these Rust Belt states that are traditionally Democrat.
I mean, I agree with you on that one. Kevin, do you think espousing, look, we talked about this earlier, I don't hear any of the candidates talking about capitalism, free trade. It's whenever, even at the GOP before, when in 2014, when the GOP won the Senate, everybody was talking about repealing Obamacare, but it had to be repeal and replace, you see. It's not repeal government, pull back government, let the market work. It's never that. It's always repeal and replace. We need another. I mean, even Rand Paul saying it. We don't have anybody who's out there saying, look, government is the problem. That's what Reagan ran on. Government's the problem. This is the problem, you see. And adding more government, we're only creating more problems. So I mean, where has that movement gone? I don't think it's dead. I think that movement would have worked really well this time around. I just think that within the GOP, we didn't have anybody that could really espouse that message. Cruz did it as best he could, but couldn't really hold off that Trump tide. I don't know. Well, maybe I'm overly optimistic.
Can I get one in?
Go.
Sorry. Can I go? I think Cruz did a great job. The problem is that Cruz was running against candidates that wouldn't drop out of the election.
Partly true.
That believed in that kind of message, that were splitting their vote. I think you would have seen, because this is a populist year. If Joe Biden would have jumped in the race, for instance, on the left, Bernie Sanders would have won the nomination, and that's the same thing that happened on the right. So I think that Cruz did a great job of espousing those beliefs. He's just crowded by Marco Rubio and Ben Carson and John Kasich, and I think that was the main problem. It wasn't that Cruz didn't do an effective job. He was a runner-up. He had more delegates than any of the runner-ups in 2012 had. So I think he did a fine job. It's just that nobody coalesced around Cruz and dropped out of the race in time.
No, I agree with you.
Right. In fact, what Cruz did was amazing when you consider he didn't have the name recognition that Trump did. He was one of the most hated people in the establishment. I mean, people think Trump is the most hated person. No. Cruz was by far and away.
Still is.
To this day, the most hated person in the Washington Republican establishment. And yet, he managed to push this election as far as he could, and actually basically ended up in second place by espousing what we've been talking about, which is conservative principles, things that I don't know how well he would have done in the general. I mean, that's a different conversation, but let me tell you this. The conservative movement is not dead. They just lost this election. They lost it to a populist.
They've lost a lot of elections, Kevin. They've lost a lot of them.
Who have they been putting up there?
They have lost since George H.W. Bush. I mean, they've lost with.
Who have the conservatives been putting up, though?
No, I mean, it's not conservatives. It's the GOP that's been putting them up, but it's GOP that's largely been pushing conservatives out of the party with McCain, with Romney. I mean, that's what I mean. I'm not saying that conservatives are losing it. I'm just saying that the GOP, the conservatives, are the GOP shifting away from the conservative movement. It's not conservatives' fault.
I disagree. I think that there's a huge rebuke of the RNC going on right now, and what you see is the people saying, no, we don't want any more McCains. We obviously they're voting.
Part of it.
Part of it is, yes, but that's why Cruz became.
But didn't you just say the real outsider was Cruz, though? The real out of everyone, Bernie, Trump, the real outsider was Cruz, and he didn't win. I don't get it. I mean, look, you're right though, because the media positioned Trump and Bernie as these anti-establishment outsiders, and then Cruz was all of a sudden Cruz is an establishment guy. I've been following this guy since he was elected. He's been hated, despised. McConnell hated him. He called McConnell a liar when he attached the export-import amendment onto the highway bill to ensure that it passed. More cronyism. He's out there, filibustering Obamacare. He's talking about defunding things, using the Constitution. He broke up the old boys club by coming in 2012 and shaking things up. They hated his guts. And all of a sudden I see Trump bots. Oh, he's an establishment guy. What? Where is it? You know what I mean?
You and I argued about this online this last week. And what to me it comes down to is politics. Because you can't get elected in America if you don't understand politics. It's sad, but it is true. And it's not just true because we have a problem in America. It's true because of just human, the way that people are. People don't have all the time in the world to run down every narrative, every fact. So you need to have a way of speaking to people that get you elected. And I think to a certain extent, Cruz went as far as he could on conservative principles. He didn't have the politics, though. This is a man who
I agree with you.
Politically doesn't know jack. And I think what you need to have in the conservative establishment is a populist, which almost sounds.
We've talked about this before, though.
Yeah,
we have talked about that. Yeah.
You need a standard bearer who, not really a populist. That's sort of the wrong. You just need somebody who's good at politics, who knows how to get people's ear.
If you put Cruz and Trump together, you'd have the best politician ever. You would have Ronald Reagan 2.0. The guy would have populist rhetoric, but undergirded by conservative principles, anchored by those things. We've always talked about that's what we needed, somebody that speaks with plain speak, but has that intellectual framework. I mean, it was Reagan. If you read any of his biographies, the man was an intellectual. He's a brilliant guy, but he never wanted to be conveyed as brilliant.
Yeah,
he never wanted to
read his diaries. Right. This is a guy who. This is not some guy who's falling asleep at meetings. This is a guy who made generations worth of policy on the right, and he's derided to this day by people who didn't know that about him. But yeah, he combined exactly what I'm saying. He combined the ability to reach the masses with an understanding of conservative principles. He was, and to a certain extent, the Republicans are always going to be looking for another Reagan, and that's kind of a curse to them. But that is what they need.
I don't know. I go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I do think the Republicans have someone on the bench that I don't even know why he didn't gain traction, but I think that he can combine these things together, and I think that's Scott Walker. I think Scott Walker would do a great job of doing exactly what we're talking about right now, but he never really got off the ground this election. I don't know why. But I do think that he would be kind of that. He's really good. He's got the plain speak. He doesn't even have a college degree. He comes off as one of you, but he has very fundamental conservative.
I agree with you on that, but I'll tell you why. And this is going to sound petty. He's small, he's balding, and he has a really nasally voice.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
That's why.
You're right.
I mean, that he's a little guy. He's not that attractive. When he speaks, he comes off. You can't take you're hard to take his message seriously. That happens with Cruz. He did a great job at CPAC. Wonderful speech. But when he's trying to appeal to other people, he's like nasally, comes off as really nerdy. Like when he got it, we talked about this when he was debating Trump, I remember. They were debating protectionism. I'm like, please, Cruz, don't get into the nuts and bolts of why protectionism's bad. Even though I'd love to see that. It's just that everyone's going to be like, oh, this guy thinks he's smarter than everyone else. A small business person's going to see that and say, oh, this guy wants free trade. He doesn't care about me. You know what I mean? He thinks he's some sort of like genius and that he knows more than I do about my own business. And you could see him, he wanted to go after Trump on that, but he was kind of like, oh, man, I know I shouldn't do this. You could tell he was advised not to do it, but couldn't help it. You know what I mean? So I think, I think that's part of it. Like a lot of it is the way you speak, how you come off, and that's all Trump is. He's no substance. It's all how he comes off, how he speaks. And he's this good old boy, New Yorker that people always, who says it like it is. You know what I mean? That's how he's won people over, like the Wayne Allen Roots and some of these other people. Finally, we got this guy that goes after the left. I think we've had the GOP that's been devoid of attacking the left. They've been largely apologetic to the left. Do you agree, Kevin?
Yeah, I think the GOP has, in some ways, been apologizing for everyone. And there's Trump apologists out there right now, and we talked about trade.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Oh, yeah, they're everywhere. Talk about trade. All right. This is a tough issue because, well, let me explain. There's apologists out there for Trump, and there are smart people out there apologizing for his stance on trade, but there's also idiots apologizing for his stance on trade by basically saying, we're for free trade, just not this free trade deal. And that's true. That's absolutely true. It's just that that's not Trump's position. Trump's position is purely populist. He believes that there should be tariffs. He doesn't believe in free trade. No matter what you say, hear this man say, he believes in, at least publicly, he believes in tariffs. He believes in putting up barriers. He is not a free trade guy. But you've got apologists out there on the Republican side saying, you know what? He's smart because he just doesn't like the TPP, which is just this morass of of insider deals, and it's not
That's
really
it.
free trade and so forth, which to a certain extent is true.
It's true, yeah.
But that's not necessarily what's going on in Trump's head.
I put a post up on my personal page today saying, look, I know a trade deal that's really great. Why don't you eliminate the 12,000 tariffs we already have? Get rid of all trade restrictions except for the ones for national security purposes, and that's a trade deal I can get behind. But stop putting out these bills that give TPP or the TAY or YMCA, whatever the hell these bills are, whatever they call them, that just give the executive more power or Congress more power when it comes to trade. I don't understand that.
Every time there's a free trade bill that's come out, from NAFTA all the way till now, they card out all the ex-presidents. Every single one of them supports it, and they stand together and they say, we have to pass this, Democrats and Republicans. Why do you think that it's the presidents? It's the executive. It's the executive branch that loves the authority of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another. Go ahead, Mike. I know you have to.
Well, I was just going to say that it's really hard, as sad as this is, to convince the public that free trade's a good idea. Protectionist rhetoric resonates with people. It makes sense to people. You tell people that we're going to save steel jobs in Pittsburgh, we're going to save auto jobs in Detroit. It's really hard to make sense of this for people, no matter what you do. And the only way that you can talk about it is, like you said, you almost feel like you're talking down to people. Now let me explain this to you, young man. So it's really hard to push these deals.
But can't you counter that, Mike, by saying, look, I'm going to lower your regulatory costs. I'm going to lower your taxes. I'm going to ensure that jobs stay here, that it's a level playing field. What I'm not going to do is tax the American people to keep you afloat.
That's the kind of rhetoric that I think that won't resonate with people. I think the only way to push free trade is to talk about how their cost of living is going to go down. The goods and services they purchase every day, TVs, food, everything that they buy is going to be cheaper. That's the only way to push these. That's the only way to push free trade.
Right, but that's my message, saying, look, I'm going to lower your regulatory costs. I'm going to lower your taxes. But what I'm not going to do is raise taxes, which a tariff is. I'm not going to, like you said, I'm not going to raise your, the cost of living, or I'm not going to decrease your standard of living by having this, this inefficient allocation of resources by adding costs.
Yeah, I think the way to attack it is by attacking the cronyism that is actually involved with tariffs, and the fact that you're protecting a very small minority at the expense
generally unions, but that's unions
at the expense of all of us,
everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's what that's socializing the costs and privatizing the benefits, and we see that all the time. That's what government truly specializes at. But this is an interesting conversation. We have 10 minutes left. I think we should probably get into our winners and losers, since that kind of always drags on. And I mean, I think it's going to be. I don't know if you have them, or if you could probably think of them off the top of your head. But I think this week it'll be easy to come up with winners and losers. I don't know who wants to start. Who has them already? Anybody?
I can go.
Go ahead, Kevin.
To me, this week, it's a tough position because we're sort of in the middle of the Democratic convention. But if you were talking to me a couple of days ago and asked me for the winners, I'd say by far it was Trump, and it was Republicans for pulling off a miracle at the convention where they had every single person in the media deriding, concentrating on his wife's, a couple lines in his wife's speech, and focusing on, the negative to the point where you had people after the first day saying it's a disaster. And yet, at the end of the convention, when they started polling people, especially after his speech, there was like a resounding, this has been a positive thing. And his bump was larger than normal, and he's gone from losing, and like I said, at the beginning of July, he had an 80% to 20% he was going to lose. He had a 20% chance of winning the election, Trump did. And after the convention, he was now the leader in terms of what if the election was held today. So I think they did a fantastic job at the convention, no matter what people say. And if you talk to me a week from now, I'll probably be saying the same thing about the Democrats, except they're getting a big, huge hand from the media, and sort of stifling a lot of the dissent that's happening behind the scenes. The loser of the week, I would say, is the media, for the way that they covered, and they were just completely wrong. It's almost like it's almost like Dewey beats Truman. They said something about the convention and saying it was a disaster, and let's see if he gets any bounce at all. And and all of a sudden the polls come out and he gets this big bounce. And they were just wrong. They completely misunderstood the way that people, especially on the right, are feeling today, and in the middle today are feeling about. Barack Obama, people are feeling pretty unsafe, and no matter what the statistics say, Trump's right. People feel less safe. People feel less safe about their jobs and about their physical security and so forth. And they capitalized on that, and the media completely missed that. But the media comes into this with a certain mindset, a left-wing mindset, so they don't view it the same way that independent America views it. The media was out of step, so they're the loser of the week.
All right, Mike.
All right, well, and this might be my last chance to make him the loser of the week because he's going to go away now. So my loser of the week this week is Bernie Sanders, whose revolution that never was came to an end this week. Bernie Sanders ran on a campaign against the establishment. He ran on a campaign against cronyism, against special interest involvement in politics. And then, not only that, Bernie Sanders had that same party sabotage his campaign. He showed up at the DNC, he got in line, and he basically showed us that he didn't have a revolution to begin with. The revolution ended this week. Bernie Sanders can go retire. He'll get a little cushy job from Hillary Clinton if she wins the nomination, but he'll be obscure from now on. So he's the loser of the week. The revolution's over. The winner of the week for me, unfortunately this week, I bring this up a lot, the winner of the week is ISIS, who still has a foothold in Iraq and Syria, who's spreading their message in Libya and around the Middle East, and has made several gains in Europe and has had multiple terrorist attacks in Europe in the last couple of weeks. And the largest military, largest power in the world is still unwilling to take the steps to defeat this enemy to the Western civilization. So they're the winner of the week, who's still chilling there over there without any threat.
Quick question, Mike. Do you think that the fact that these attacks are happening so often and they're almost to the point of not being ignored, but it's just like they become a short story, do you think that's hurting ISIS? Like the shock factor is going away? Yeah.
It does to I think you're right. I think it does to an extent. But I think that as ISIS continues to kind of unfettered, be able to carry out these attacks, eventually they're going to carry out an attack on the scale of 9/11, and no one's going to be able to ignore it anymore. These are smaller scale attacks, a lot of lone wolves that are inspired by ISIS, or ISIS fighters that are kind of in little packs of 2 or 3 that are hard to track. But the longer this goes on, and the less of a splash they make, and the more motivated they get to make a bigger one, we're going to have a 9/11 scale attack, whether that happens in London or Berlin or in the United States. It's going to happen eventually, and they're going to make a splash.
That's a good point.
All right. My winners and losers of the week were similar. My loser was going to be Bernie Sanders because his speech was laughable. It was everything's horrible. The 1% control everything. We have all the wealth is controlled by a small portion of people. Thank you, Barack Obama, for your wonderful leadership. It's like, who the hell's been leading the country for the last 8 years? Barry Goldwater. Anyway, instead of Barry Obama, I guess Barry Goldwater is the one that instituted all the stimulus and so on, and instituted the what is that thing? The Dodd-Frank bill that crowded out smaller banks at the that instituted all these regulations that come at the expense of smaller banks that can't pay all the regulatory costs. I think it was I can't remember the foundation that put it out, but they put out the absolute monstrosity that this Dodd-Frank is, and what the man hours are, and what the cost. I think it was $73 billion a year, and then that's not to mention the thousands and thousands of hours of man hours that have just destroyed small banks, and have actually made too big to fail a reality rather than doing anything to stop it. So, I mean, this party I think they're seriously awful human beings. I think the fact that there's communist flags flying there and that there's a communist speaking there, I'm over it. I'm over the the Democrats. No, they're just nice people. They're not. They're horrible people. Sorry, everybody. Now I'm going to go to my winner of the week. My winner of the week, this is a tough one. It's Trump, because this party is so dysfunctional, so far left, so polarizing, so extreme, that I think that these blue-collar Democrats are going to run to him, and I think that this is just another instance of that. I think that the general has been largely pretty bad for Trump up until now. I think that Hillary stayed largely quiet. I think now that the Democrats have a megaphone, you see what's going on behind these curtains. It's going to help Trump in the end, and that's pretty much it. But thank you everybody for watching and listening to whatever Mike Lee says. I know that's tough, especially especially with Kevin and his numerous Sandlot hats. But you follow our page. Kevin's video is doing really well that he just posted. You could find that on there. Is that that is your Winged Ravens, Winged Beavers?
Beavers.
That is your high school team, huh?
That's right. And it was an all boys school.
I'm not even going to start on that on air, but off air I will make fun of you for that.
Thank you.
Can I change my loser of the week? Your high school's name is the Winged Beavers. That's what your high school's mascot.
Hey, Brian Leach went there, and Jonathan Quick. Brian Leach and Jonathan Quick.
I am a huge Brian Leach fan, though.
I don't even care.
I hate Quick.
Winged Beavers. What is a winged beaver?
Aspires and perseveres.
Yeah, okay. That is the most...
Right.
That's what they told us. I don't know.
That's what I thought a winged beaver was. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Next week I'll have somebody here from the Tax Foundation. The leader of the Tax Foundation. We're going to talk tax policy and how awful taxes really are. And thanks for watching. Follow our pages on our page, Unbiased America. Also, we are capitalists and being classically liberal. Visit our website. The show will be there all week on unbiasedamerica.com, where we post our latest show to the page. Thanks for watching, and good night.